The first ray of sunlight cut through the heavy curtains and touched the pale face of the woman lying on the floor between the bed and the wall. Maid Anna Peterson, who had worked at the Marriott Hotel for 7 years, froze in the doorway. Unable to take her eyes off the motionless body, her first impulse was to scream, but years of work had taught her to restrain her emotions. With trembling hands, she pulled out her cell phone and dialed the hotel security number. 20 minutes later, room 304 was buzzing like a beehive. Uniformed police officers fenced off the crime scene with yellow tape. Forensic scientists in white jumpsuits searched for traces of the crime. A photographer clicked his camera, capturing the body and surroundings from various angles. Detective Leah Brooks parked her tattered Ford in the hotel parking lot and turned off the radio in the middle of a jazz song. 35-degree heat in the shade, unusual even for San Diego this time of year. She adjusted her dark blue jacket, smoothed her unruly black hair, and headed toward the hotel entrance. The doorman nodded respectfully. Brooks was a frequent visitor. Petty thefts, family scandals, and occasionally more serious crimes occurred regularly at the upscale hotel. But today was different. Lieutenant Parker had personally called her home and asked her to come over. The murder of a young woman was a rarity in this neighborhood. Brooks stepped into the elevator and pressed the third-floor button, mentally preparing herself for what she would see at the top. Officer Nelson met her at the door of the suite. "Good morning, Detective. Victim is a female approximately 25 to 30 years old, Idaho in purse in the name of Samantha Hall. Discovered by a maid at 7 a.m. this morning. Apparently death occurred last night." Brooks put on latex gloves and entered the room. The smell of death had not yet had time to fill the room, but a subtle heaviness hung in the air. A body lay between the wide double bed and the wall. A young woman, slender, with brown hair, dressed in a blue dress. At first glance, there were distinctive strangulation marks on her neck. "Who called the pathologist?" Brooks asked, looking around the room. "Dr. Collins is on his way," replied one of the CSIs, collecting samples from the carpet next to the body. Brooks slowly walked around the room. On one side of the bed were spread out items, men's military-style clothing. On the bedside table was a framed photograph. A smiling Samantha Hall in a wedding dress next to a man in a U.S. Marine Corps uniform. "Room is in the name of Michael Hall, paid for by credit card," Nelson reported, reviewing the records on his tablet. "Checked in yesterday afternoon around 14 o'clock. Witnesses? Security footage?" Brooks walked to the window, then to the desk against the wall. "Hotel security provided footage from the lobby and corridors. The tech department is already working with them. Several guests reported hearing a loud argument around 19 o'clock, but no one called security." On the table, Brooks noticed an open bottle of whiskey, 2 glasses, one empty, the other nearly full. A man's wallet lay nearby. The detective opened it and found a driver's license in the name of Michael Hall, 33 years old. A military ID card confirmed that the man was a captain in the U.S. Marine Corps. "Where's the husband now?" Brooks asked, continuing to look around the room. Nelson shook his head. "Not known yet. The front desk confirms he hasn't turned in his key. His car is missing from the parking lot." At that moment, Dr. Evan Collins entered the room, a tall, graying man with an attentive gaze. He and Brooks had developed an almost friendly relationship over the many years they'd worked together, though they'd never met outside of work. "Good morning, Leah." Collins nodded, putting on gloves and pulling tools from his briefcase. "What do we have today?" "Samantha Hall, 27 years old according to her driver's license. Presumed strangled last night. Husband's missing." Collins crouched next to the body and began his examination. "Asphyxiation," he muttered after a few minutes. "The finger marks on the neck are very clear. Death occurred approximately 12 to 14 hours ago. Signs of a struggle are minimal. It appears the attack was unexpected by the victim." Brooks scrutinized the victim's hands. The manicure was intact, no defensive marks visible. Under the fingernails are clean. The victim didn't scratch her attacker. On the ring finger of her left hand was a wedding ring with a small diamond. "That's odd," Brooks observed. "If her husband killed her, why didn't he take the ring? And why did he leave his wallet and ID? Panic?" Nelson suggested. "Or he wanted us to quickly identify the victim." Brooks shook her head. "We need to find Michael Hall immediately. Nelson, check his military unit, credit cards, phone, every possible contact. There were no signs of a struggle in the bathroom. On the sink were cosmetics, a hairbrush with a few long brown hairs, toothpaste, and 2 brushes in a cup. Brooks's gaze stopped at the trash can. Among the tissues and empty hygiene product wrappers lay a crumpled envelope with no sender's address. The detective carefully pulled it out with tweezers and unfolded it. Inside was only a small slip of paper with the printed text, "She's not what she seems. Ask her real name." Brooks placed the envelope in an evidence bag and returned to the room. Collins had already finished his preliminary examination and was giving instructions to the orderlies preparing the body for transportation to the morgue. "Evan, we need results as soon as possible," Brooks said. "Something doesn't add up here." Collins nodded. "I'll do a full autopsy later today. Preliminary results will be in by tonight." Brooks took another look around the room. A standard room with a double bed in an upscale hotel. Nothing out of the ordinary. A couple arrived, probably had dinner together. Then something happened. An argument, a conflict. Husband strangled his wife and fled, leaving all his belongings behind. "Nelson, I need security footage. Entrance, exit, hallway. See if anyone used the elevator or stairs after 19 o'clock. We need to establish the exact time Michael Hall left the hotel." As the body was being loaded onto the gurney, Brooks noticed an unusual locket around the victim's neck, a silver pendant in the shape of a starfish. She made a mental note to ask Dr. Collins about it. It might be an important detail. Brooks spent the next 2 hours interviewing hotel staff and guests in neighboring rooms. The story slowly emerged. Michael and Samantha Hall checked in yesterday around 14 o'clock. The receptionist recalled that they seemed happy, laughing a lot. Michael said he had just returned from a long business trip and they wanted to spend the weekend together. At about 17 o'clock, the couple went down to the hotel restaurant. The waiter remembered them. They ordered a bottle of champagne, had a glass each, but dinner was hardly touched. About 18:30, they returned to the room. At 19 hours and 5 minutes, a guest from a neighboring room called the receptionist, complaining of a loud argument. When the hotel employee came up, the hallway was quiet and he did not disturb the guests. On the security footage, Brooks saw Michael Hall leave the hotel through a side exit at 21 hours and 12 minutes. His expression was tense, with only his car keys in his hands, no luggage. "We need to see if he withdrew money from his bank accounts," Brooks told Nelson, "and request border crossing information. If he's headed to Mexico, we don't have much time." Back at headquarters, Brooks's first order of business was to call the military unit where Hall was serving. The officer on duty confirmed that Captain Hall had recently returned from a 6-month deployment to Afghanistan and was taking a 2-week leave of absence. "Who was he friends with in the unit? Who can know where he might have been headed?" Brooks asked. "His closest friend is Lieutenant James Foster. They've served together for the last 5 years, but Foster's in training right now, won't be back until tomorrow." Brooks wrote down Foster's name and contact information. Then she searched the police database for information on the couple. Neither Michael nor Samantha had any criminal records or priors. Samantha's driver's license was issued in New York State 3 years ago. There was no record of her in the system before that. The phone on Brooks's desk rang. It was Dr. Collins. "Leah, I've started the autopsy. There's something unusual. I think you should come and see for yourself." "I'm on my way," Brooks replied, sensing the case was taking an unexpected turn. On the way to the morgue, she pondered the strange letter found in the room. "She's not what she seems." What did that mean? Was Samantha hiding something from her husband? Was there a double life? Another man? Or something more serious? Brooks parked outside the morgue building and hurried inside. Evan Collins was waiting for her at the entrance to the autopsy room, his face impenetrable. "What did you find?" Brooks asked, donning a protective gown and mask. Collins led her to the table where Samantha Hall's body lay. Death was from asphyxiation, that's for sure. The finger marks on the neck belonged to a large male, presumably right-handed. But there's something else. He pointed out internal organs and anatomical features that Brooks, not being a medical professional, couldn't properly interpret. "Samantha Hall was born male," Collins said. "She underwent gender reassignment surgery, very high quality, performed by a top-notch surgeon. But she has no uterus, fallopian tubes, ovaries, all the female reproductive organs. Brooks shifted her gaze from the body to the doctor's face. Are you sure? Absolutely. I sent the samples off for genetic analysis, but the results are already obvious. Biologically, this was a male who had undergone hormone therapy and surgical correction. It was cold in the prosector's office. Detective Leah Brooks nervously clutched a plastic cup of cold coffee in her hands as she watched Dr. Collins finish her autopsy paperwork. Samantha Hall's body was already stitched up and covered with a sheet. So, are you sure Samantha was born male? Brooks repeated, still not fully comprehending what she had heard. Collins took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose tiredly. Absolutely. There's no doubt about it here. The surgery was done to a high standard, probably years ago. The hormone therapy was also long-term. She had the distribution of adipose tissue, the softness of her skin, characteristic of women. But genetically and anatomically, the internal reproductive organs are completely absent. There are traces of surgical shaping of the external female reproductive organs. Brooks set the coffee aside and pulled out a notebook. That explains the note in the room. She's not what she appears to be. Someone tipped off her husband about Samantha's past. That was probably the motive for the murder. Perhaps she didn't have time to tell him herself, Collins said thoughtfully. Or didn't want to. Such operations are no longer uncommon now, but society still isn't always ready to accept it. Especially if you're a military man raised in a conservative environment, Brooks nodded. I need to check Samantha's previous paperwork, find her real name. I've done my examination as thoroughly as possible, Collins added. There are no other injuries on the body other than strangulation marks. Presumably the killer attacked the victim from behind, encircling the neck with his forearm and compressing the carotid arteries. Death was quick, within minutes. Brooks mentally visualized the murder scene. A large man, a military man trained to kill, strangling his wife in a rage, having just learned her secret. A man like that is dangerous. We need to find him as soon as possible. Back at the department, Brooks immediately began a background check on Samantha Hall. She contacted the New York Department of Motor Vehicles, where Samantha's license had been issued, and requested information on previous records. The answer came back within an hour. Samantha Hall received her first New York driver's license exactly 3 years ago. Prior to that, there were no documents in her name in the database. That's odd, Brooks thought. It's like she came out of nowhere at the age of 24. The detective expanded her search by plugging in the federal database. To her surprise, she discovered that a passport in the name of Samantha Hall had been issued 3.5 years ago in New York City. Even earlier, about 4 years ago, Samantha had officially changed her name. A name change from Samuel Jenkins to Samantha Hall had been recorded at the Kings County Courthouse in Brooklyn. Brooks did a quick background check on Samuel Jenkins. Born in Boston 27 years ago, graduated from high school with honors, went to New York University to study art. After his sophomore year, the information dropped off. This is it, Brooks muttered, making notes. The phone rang. It was Officer Nelson. Detective, there's an update. Lieutenant James Foster just got back from a training exercise. I contacted him and he agreed to meet with you. Said he knows Michael Hall better than anyone else. Great. Where and when? He's expecting you at the Café Coastal in 30 minutes. It's not far from the base. Brooks quickly gathered her papers and headed for the exit. On the way, she called the department head. Sir, we have a motive. Victim was a transgender woman, allegedly hiding it from her husband. I'm on my way to meet a friend of the suspect, maybe get some more information. Okay, Brooks. Be careful, and keep me posted, the supervisor replied. The Coastal Café turned out to be a small establishment overlooking the ocean, popular with the military. Brooks immediately spotted James Foster, a tall man with a military bearing, sitting at a corner table. He was in civilian clothes, but his haircut and posture gave away the military look. Lieutenant Foster? Brooks introduced herself, showing her ID. Detective Leah Brooks. Just James, please, he replied, pointing to the chair across from him. I'm told Michael is a wanted man. What happened? Something with Samantha? Brooks looked at her interlocutor carefully, trying to figure out if he was truly unaware of what had happened, or if he was playing a role. Mr. Foster, Samantha Hall was murdered last night at the Marriott Hotel. All evidence points to her being strangled by her husband, who fled afterward. Do you have any idea where Michael Hall might be? Foster's face expressed genuine shock. God, no, I can't believe it. Mike is incapable of... This is some kind of mistake. Unfortunately, the facts say otherwise. We have security footage, witness statements. An envelope was found in the room with a note. She's not what she seems. Ask her real name. Do you know anything about that? Foster turned pale and looked away. He was clearly struggling with himself, deciding what to say. James, Michael is in grave danger. If he surrenders voluntarily, that will be taken into account by the court. But if we find him ourselves, things could end up much worse, Brooks said softly. Foster took a deep breath. A week ago, Mike received an anonymous letter. There were pictures of Samantha when she was young, or rather, pictures of a guy who looked a lot like Samantha, and copies of some documents. He showed me this letter, asking me what I thought. I said it was probably someone's evil joke, photoshopped. That's what Mike thought at first. But then he started noticing the details. Samantha never talked about her childhood, never showed family photos. She didn't have any close friends from her past. So he decided to check it out? Brooks asked. Yes, Mike said he booked a hotel room to have a serious talk with Samantha. He loved her, detective. Really loved her, but he felt she was hiding something. Were you aware of the fact that Samantha wasn't always a woman? No, of course not. I was best man at their wedding 2 years ago. Samantha seemed like an ordinary woman, sweet, caring. They met through mutual friends when Mike was on vacation in New York. 6 months later, they were married. Brooks made a note in her notebook. Where do you think Michael might be now? Foster hesitated. He has a hunting cabin in the mountains, about 100 miles from here. We've traveled there a few times. If he wanted to be alone, he could have traveled there. Do you have an address? No exact one, but I can show you the approximate location on a map. It's a pretty secluded place, and there's only one road to get there, and it's not a good one. Foster drew a diagram on a napkin. Right here, near Lake Arrow, an old cabin, belonged to his father. Brooks looked at the diagram. Are there any guns in there? In the cabin? I think so, yes. There should definitely be a hunting rifle. Thanks for the information, James. Don't try to contact Michael. It can only make things more difficult. Foster nodded. Detective, I've known Mike for years. He's a good man. If he did this, he was out of his mind. All his life, he's played by the rules. Brooks nodded understandingly. I will do my best to resolve this situation peacefully. Leaving the cafe, Brooks immediately contacted headquarters. I need an extraction team. We have an estimated location of the suspect. Armed and dangerous. Military training. Back in the office, Brooks busied herself reviewing the surveillance tapes provided by the hotel. They clearly showed the chronology of events. 14 hours and 20 minutes. Michael and Samantha Hall enter the hotel, check in, and go up to their room. Both looking relaxed, Michael is carrying one large suitcase. 17 hours and 5 minutes. The couple walk down to the restaurant. 18 hours and 32 minutes, they return to the room. Michael looks somewhat tense. Samantha looks worried. 21 hours and 12 minutes. Michael Hall quickly exits the hotel through a side exit. His gait is determined, his face grim. Only his car keys are in his hands. The following records showed that no one else entered room 304 until the morning the maid discovered the body. Brooks pieced together the facts. A couple checking into the hotel. Michael is probably planning a serious conversation with his wife. They go down for dinner, but the atmosphere is already tense. They return to the room, and there is a confrontation. Michael learns the truth about Samantha's past, becomes enraged and kills her, then leaves the hotel in a panic. Another call interrupts the detective's musings. Brooks, I have additional information on the victim, the analyst from the tech department reported. Samantha Hall, formerly known as Samuel Jenkins, underwent a sex reassignment procedure at a clinic in Philadelphia 4 years ago. The operation was performed by the renowned surgeon Dr. Robert Williams. The full cost of the medical procedures totaled over $100,000. Where would a student get that kind of money? Wondered Brooks. Here's what's interesting. A year before the surgery, Samuel Jenkins received a large inheritance from his grandfather, about $400,000. Some of the money went to the operation, the rest to buy an apartment in New York and miscellaneous expenses. What about family? His parents divorced when he was 12. Mother died of cancer 5 years ago. The father lives in Florida. They haven't spoken in the last 7 years. Thank you. Send me a full report. Brooks hung up the phone and leaned back in her chair. Samantha's story was beginning to clear up. A young man who may have felt he was in the wrong body for years. After receiving an inheritance, he decides to take the drastic step of a sex change, changes his name, creates a new life. He meets a man, falls in love, gets married, but doesn't talk about her past, and then someone reveals her secret. Who sent the anonymous letter to Michael? And why? Was it just malice or revenge? Brooks made a note to check the couple's entourage for people who might know about Samantha's past and have a motive to destroy her marriage. The phone rang again. This time it was Captain Thompson. Brooks, the extraction team is ready. We're leaving in 30 minutes for the cabin. Are you with us? Absolutely, Brooks replied, quickly gathering the necessary paperwork. Before leaving, she went over Michael Hall's personnel file one more time. Marine captain, 33 years old. Several awards for service in Afghanistan and Iraq. Impeccable character reference from his commanding officer. Tactical intelligence specialist. Experienced marksman. This isn't going to be easy, Brooks thought as she headed for the parking lot. The drive into the mountains took almost 2 hours. The extraction team consisted of 6 SWAT officers and Detective Brooks. They stopped a mile from the suspected location of the cabin and proceeded on foot, using extreme caution. The cabin turned out to be a small wooden structure on the shore of the lake. Smoke from the chimney confirmed that someone was inside. A black SUV, Michael Hall's car, was parked next to the house. He's in there, the assault team leader said quietly. How do we proceed? Brooks assessed the situation. I'll try talking to him. He's military, used to subordination and respects authority. It might be possible to convince him to surrender peacefully. It's too risky. He's armed and he's just committed murder. Which is exactly why I have to try. If we start an assault, he might open fire and someone will get hurt. After a brief meeting, it was decided that Brooks would approach the hut accompanied by one officer, and the rest of the group would take up positions around it, ready to intervene at the first sign of danger. Brooks removed her body armor, a gesture of trust, and slowly made her way toward the hut. Her heart was beating fast, but years of police work had taught her to control her fear. Michael Hall! She called loudly, stopping 20 paces from the door. I'm Detective Leah Brooks with the San Diego Police Department. I need to talk to you. There was silence inside the cabin. Then footsteps were heard, and the door slowly opened. On the threshold stood Michael Hall, a tall man with a military bearing, a tired face and red eyes. In his hands, he held a hunting rifle. Put the gun down, Mr. Hall, Brooks said calmly. Let's talk. Michael looked at her, then at the officer standing a little behind him and at the surrounding woods, where no doubt other police officers were lurking. I know why you're here, he said quietly. I killed my wife. The San Diego airport buzzed like a disturbed beehive. Passengers were rushing to their flights, rolling suitcases, saying goodbye to loved ones. No one paid attention to the tense man in dark glasses sitting motionless in the waiting area. His gaze was fixed on the departure board. The flight to Mexico City was scheduled to begin boarding in 20 minutes. Michael Hall drummed his fingers nervously on the handle of a small gym bag. A passport, a few $1,000s in cash, and a change of clothes were all he had brought with him. The rest didn't matter. His past life had ended 2 days ago at the Marriott Hotel, in room 304. He didn't notice the 3 plainclothes men approaching him. It was only when they surrounded him on all sides that Michael looked up. Captain Hall, Detective Silverman, San Diego Police Department, you are being held on suspicion of the murder of Samantha Hall. Michael didn't resist. He silently held out his hands for the handcuffs and allowed himself to be led out of the waiting room. As he passed the check-in counter, he cast one last glance at the scoreboard. The flight to Mexico City had just begun boarding. At the police headquarters, Detective Leah Brooks was already waiting for him. Watching from behind the glass as the officers led Michael Hall down the corridor, she noted his military bearing, his tense shoulders, his absent gaze. He didn't look like a madman who'd killed his wife in a fit of rage, more like a man whose world had fallen apart overnight. Detective Brooks, I think you should handle the interrogation yourself, said Captain Thompson, standing nearby. You know all the details of the case. And I understand that some contact has already been established between you and the detainee." Brooks nodded. Their brief conversation outside the cabin was interrupted by the arrival of the main extraction team. Hall had been led away without giving Leah a chance to question him. But even in that minute, she sensed a strange mixture of determination and desperation in him. "Let's see what he has to say," Brooks replied as she stepped into the interrogation room. Michael Hall was sitting at a table, handcuffed to a special ring. He looked up when Brooks entered, nodding briefly as he recognized her. "Mr. Hall, I'm Detective Leah Brooks. We met at the cabin, remember? I'm now leading the investigation into the murder of your wife, Samantha Hall." "I understand," Michael replied quietly. "Have you been read your rights? Do you want an attorney present during the questioning?" "My rights are known to me. I don't need a lawyer. I killed Samantha. I'm willing to be punished." Brooks turned on the recorder and introduced herself for the record, stating the date and time of the interview and the identity of the person being questioned. "Mr. Hall, tell us what happened at the Marriott Hotel on Wednesday night." Michael took a deep breath, as if gathering his strength. "I found out that my wife was not who she claimed to be. Our entire marriage was based on lies. I was furious. I lost control." "Be specific, please. You found out that Samantha was a transgender woman, right?" Michael flinched upon hearing those words. "Yes, I found out that I married to someone who was born a man, who hid his past from me." "How exactly did you find that out?" "A letter. An anonymous letter came to my name at the unit. Inside were pictures of Samuel Jenkins, and copies of medical documents about the surgery. I didn't believe it at first. I thought it was some kind of sick joke, but then I started to notice the details. Samantha never talked about her childhood, never showed me family photos. She had no close friends from her past. There were peculiarities in her intimate life that I chalked up to her. Modesty." Brooks took notes, trying to keep a neutral expression on her face. "And you decided to have a confrontation? Is that why you booked a hotel room?" "Yes, I just got back from Afghanistan. Hadn't seen my wife in 6 months. I wanted to have a quiet talk, away from home. Thought maybe she'd explain herself, and there'd be some reasonable explanation." "What happened in the room?" Michael closed his eyes and could see the events of that evening flashing before his mental mind's eye. Samantha had a habit of singing in the shower. Michael sat on the bed, listening to her melodious voice coming from the bathroom, and held in his hands the printed photographs from the anonymous letter, photographs of a young man so similar to his wife that there was no doubt left. When the sound of the water subsided, he took a deep breath, gathering his strength. Samantha came out of the bathroom, wrapped in a white robe, her hair damp. Her eyes glowed with happiness. "What are you thinking about, sweetie?" she asked, sitting down next to him and gently touching his shoulder. Michael held out the pictures to her. "Who is this, Samantha?" She looked at the pictures and froze. The blood rushed from her face. "Where did you get this?" she whispered. "It doesn't matter. Answer the question. Who is it?" Samantha stood up and stepped back to the window, clutching the edges of her robe tightly. "Michael, I can explain. So it's true? You used to be a man? Samuel Jenkins?" "I was never a man, Michael. I've always been a woman, just in the wrong body. Please let me explain." But Michael wasn't listening anymore. The blood pounded in his temples. 2 years of marriage, 2 years of intimacy, and all that time. "You tricked me! You're a monster! How could you hide it? I loved you, Michael. I was afraid of losing you. I knew how you would react. You're not even a woman. You're a freak!" Samantha cried, but there was also anger in her eyes. "Don't you dare say that! I am a woman! I've always been one! What we had between us was real!" "Real? You lied to me every single day, every single night. You... Michael grabbed the bottle of whiskey on the table and took a big gulp straight from the neck. Samantha stepped closer, holding out her hand. "Michael, please, let's talk calmly. I love you, you love me, the rest doesn't matter." He pushed her hand away. "Don't touch me. I'm not gay. I haven't slept with a man. I'm not a man, Michael. You were born one. You have a Y chromosome, damn it. Our whole life is a lie." Samantha shook her head in despair. No, Michael, the lies were before the surgery. Now I'm finally living the truth. I've always been the woman inside. He laughed, bitterly, angrily. And when were you going to tell me? After you got married? After the children were born? Oh, wait, you don't have a uterus. You can't even have children. Another lie. I was going to tell you, Michael. But first, I wanted you to love me for who I am. Not for my past or my biology, but for my soul. Your soul? Your soul is built on deception. Michael took another sip of whiskey and threw the bottle across the room. It shattered against the wall, shards and liquid flying across the floor. Samantha recoiled. You're drunk, Michael. Let's talk in the morning when you've calmed down. She headed for the door, but Michael grabbed her arm and turned her toward him. You're not going anywhere. We're ending this conversation now. Let me go. You're hurting me. Michael shoved her and Samantha fell onto the bed. He loomed over her, eyes burning with rage. 2 years! 2 years you lied to me! I loved you! I risked my life in bloody Afghanistan thinking of you, dreaming of coming back to you, and you laughed at me the whole time! I never laughed, Michael. I loved you every minute of it! Samantha tried to get up, but Michael grabbed her by the throat and pinned her to the bed. Michael, don't... please! She wheezed, trying to free herself from his grip. Shut up! Shut up! His fingers clenched tighter and tighter. He saw the fear in her eyes, saw her struggling to draw breath as she clung to his hands, but he couldn't stop. Rage, betrayal, self-loathing all mixed into one powerful feeling, as destructive as a tsunami. After a few minutes, Samantha stopped resisting. Her arms fell limply to the bed, her eyes glazed over. Only then did Michael realize what he had done. He let go of her neck and recoiled in horror. Samantha? Samantha! But she didn't answer. She wasn't breathing. There were clear traces of his fingers on her neck. I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to kill her. Michael finished his story, looking down at the table. I just lost control. Brooks watched him closely. His face had gone through a whole gamut of emotions during his story, from anger to remorse. What did you do after you realized she was dead? I panicked. Sat next to her for I don't know how long. Then I decided to run. Took my car keys and just left. Went to our cabin. I wanted to get my head together. And why did you decide to flee to Mexico? I knew they'd find me sooner or later, but I wasn't ready. For prison, the embarrassment. I wanted to buy time. Maybe kill myself somewhere else. Brooks asked a few more clarifying questions, but the gist of the story was clear. A crime of anger and betrayal. A classic case were it not for the circumstances. Mr. Hall, you will be charged with second-degree murder. Given your candid confession and lack of criminal history, there is the possibility of a reduced sentence, but it will be up to the court to decide. Michael nodded. I understand. I deserve to be punished. After the interrogation, Brooks returned to her office and sat looking at the crime scene photos for a long time. Samantha Hall, a beautiful young woman whose life had been cut short so tragically. Could she have foreseen her husband's reaction? Was it worth hiding her past? The next day, Brooks visited the Hall couple's apartment. She wanted to better understand who Samantha was, what kind of person Michael Hall had killed. The apartment was cozy, tastefully furnished. On the walls, photos from their travels together on the shelves, books on art and psychology. In the bedroom on Samantha's bedside table was a diary. Brooks hesitated, but eventually opened it. The last entry was made the day before the tragedy. Seeing Michael tomorrow after 6 months apart, so excited. He's booked a hotel room, says he wants our meeting to be special. I've missed him every day. Sometimes I wonder if I did the right thing by not telling him about my past, but every time I wanted to open up, something stopped me. Fear of rejection? Maybe. Michael's so traditional about some things. But he loves me, I know it. And I hope that someday, when our relationship is stronger, I'll find the strength to tell him the truth. And he'll realize that I've always been the one he loved. Inside. Brooks closed the journal, feeling heavy on her heart. 2 lives ruined by secrets and an inability to accept differences. A week later, when all the reports were turned in and the case was officially closed, Brooks met Dr. Collins at their favorite cafe. The pathologist looked tired but calm. "How are you?" he asked, noticing the dark circles under Brooks's eyes. "Fine. It's just that this case got me thinking." Collins nodded understandingly. "About what exactly?" "About how little we know about each other, about how easily our prejudices can ruin lives. Michael Hall was a good man, loyal, honest, brave, but he couldn't accept the truth about his wife. And she couldn't trust him from the beginning," Collins added. "Yes, a vicious circle of mistrust and fear." They were silent, each thinking about something else. Then Brooks asked, "What do you think will happen to Hall?" All things considered, probably between 15 and 25 years old. His military background, a clean confession, and affect are all mitigating factors. But he killed a man. 2 people died in that hotel room, Brooks said quietly. Samantha physically and Michael spiritually. Collins twirled his coffee cup thoughtfully. "You know, I've done hundreds of autopsies in my career. And if I've learned anything, it's that biology is only part of who we are. Our souls don't have a gender, Leah. They just, exist. And we cage them in our prejudices." "You're not much of a philosopher," Brooks smiled, but there were tears in her eyes. "Just an old man who has seen too many deaths," Collins replied. "Come on, I'll walk you to your car. Tomorrow's a new day, new business." They walked outside. The sun was slipping toward sunset, coloring the San Diego sky in shades of orange and pink. Life went on in all its variety, beautiful and cruel at the same time. Brooks thought about Samantha and Michael, about love and hate, about truth and lies, about how fragile human relationships are and how easy it is to destroy what has been built over years. She also reflected on the letter that triggered the tragedy. Investigation revealed that it was sent by Samantha's former co-worker from New York, who learned about her new life from social media. Simple jealousy of someone else's happiness, which turned into cruel revenge. This man will be punished too, but no punishment will bring Samantha's life back or heal Michael's mental wounds. "See you tomorrow, Evan," Brooks said as she got into the car. "See you tomorrow, Leah. Take care." She started the engine and turned on the radio. A jazz song filled the car's interior with the soft sounds of a saxophone. Brooks pulled onto the road, heading home. There was another day ahead, another investigation, another human tragedy waiting to be resolved. But right now, she just wanted to be alone with her music and her thoughts about the complexity of the world we live in, and the difficult price we sometimes pay for misunderstanding and intolerance. At home, Brooks opened a bottle of wine and stepped out onto the balcony. The night city spread out before her with millions of lights. Behind each of those lights was someone's life, someone's story, someone's secrets and hopes. How many more Samanthas and Michaels are hiding behind those lights? How many people live in fear of being misunderstood, rejected, judged? "Here's to you, Samantha and Michael," Brooks said quietly, raising her glass. "And here's to a world where one day stories like this will no longer exist."